Good morning. Welcome to my garden. I'm Chris Southwick and I live in North Nanaimo on the central coast of Vancouver Island. And just a quick update on my property. This is the 11th year that this garden has been started. It started from scratch and it is a small, it's a pie-shaped piece of property. Small, 40 feet on the cul-de-sac and 220 feet along the railway track. So you'll see that I was able to incorporate in the design of the garden the vegetation and the Douglas firs and cedars along the railway tracks. So I started this garden, and the plants that I brought to the garden were over 200, but that included mostly rhododendrons, but quite a few other companion plants like ferns and things as well. But since that time, even though I had them planted very far apart, now they are very close together. And with our wet spring, things have really grown this year. So let's go on a tour of my garden. All right. So the house is built right in the middle of the property so that we can walk all the way around. So there are two ways to begin, but I'll start at the shadier part of my garden and then we'll walk more into the sun. This property is facing north towards the cul-de-sac, south on the railway tracks. So we're going east now. These sunflowers, I planted them very late and didn't have a place to put them in my garden, so I just planted them in pots as a welcome to my garden. Some people are horrified at how many plants that I have in pots, but some of them are destined to go to other places, like with our Rhodo Club, or they are plants that someone has given to me, or things like that, or I'm not sure yet where to put them. So yes, so I have many things in pots. I have only a few annuals, and I try and choose my annuals just for color, for interest, or to try something to see how it works. This is a begonia that is called dragon wings. And there are 3 plants in this pot, probably too many, but that's what you have to practice. I really enjoy a few hanging baskets. Unfortunately, they're things you have to water frequently, so these ones I keep them in my little shed over the winter, and this is the 2nd year for these particular varieties. I love begonias, and some of these have huge corms that are probably about 6-8 inches in diameter, actually. So have many different kinds of begonias. And then to the side of my shed, where you can see Rosina standing there, these are where we've just potted up the cuttings from the propagation group for the Rhodo Club. And this is somewhat dappled shade, but more shade than sun. So we're growing these on for sale hopefully next year. Some of my plants, like this is lemon verbena. People walk by it and it has incredible fragrance of the leaves. Have some interesting types of plants like these eucomis. This is also eucomis. It's called the pineapple. Some people call it the pineapple plant. It kind of looks like a pineapple. So I'm not just a rhododendron lover. I do love all sorts of interesting plants. This one is eucomis freckles. We're now walking on a new pathway I put into this property because this is a wet property. It has a very high water table and it's built on clay, and this even sometimes in the summer it is wet, so this helps with walking people through the garden and so that you don't get such wet feet. You can see the water here. The irrigation system came on this morning, and you can tell that it's not draining away very much. So all of the beds in my garden I had to create building the soil up and planting on top so that they had enough drainage, because for rhododendrons they really need to have good drainage and air in their roots. So this is a beautiful plant that one of our members, Diana Walker, gave to me. It was behind one of her fences, or at the edge of her fence, and it was leaning to the light. And I planted it so that it would go towards the south, so that it's actually beginning to right itself and growing taller, and it's very happy here. It's gold strike, beautiful, beautiful Cinnabarinum cross that is very a clear yellow. It's just, when it's just covered in yellow, it's mid to early blooming. This is a Eucryphia nymanzae. The parent plant was in Milner Gardens in Colicum, and this is the first year it's bloomed. It's just about over, but the pollinators love it because it's one of the few things that are blooming at this time of year. And besides rhododendrons, I have decided I need to have a much greater variety of plants so that the pollinators will be happy. You can see the bees coming to it now. Yeah. People say, why rhododendrons? Why do you love rhododendrons? Well, for me, I think the proof is in the pudding. You can see that there is an incredible variety of leaf shape, leaf color, and the underside of the leaf. It's a Borovii cross, actually, but it has this beautiful pale orange indumentum. One of its parents is Borovii, and once you've collected rhododendrons or grown rhododendrons for a while, I found that even though some of the hybrids have the most beautiful flowers, most of the year you're looking at leaves. So the most interesting leaves are in species. For example, this one, which is orbiculaire, you can see it has roundish leaves. We were looking at a Borovii hybrid teddy bear behind us, but this is the parent of teddy bear. This is Borovii, which has an incredible amount of indumentum, even down the stems. So there's brown indumentum, there's white indumentum. Beautiful, beautiful leaves, dark, shiny. This is Laramie. This is a hybrid. It's a hybrid of Machiavianum. So it has a beautiful white, very large truss of flowers. The flowers are gorgeous, but they don't last very long, but yet the leaves are exquisite. As is this species, which is Uefangensi, which blooms very young. It's bloomed when this plant is maybe, I've had it for maybe 3 or 4 years. Bloomed the first year I had it, but it's a very, very unique substance to the leaf. It is in a bluish tinge, and people can't believe that this is a rhododendron. But beautiful big pink trusses. One of the reasons I chose this property is because of the dappled shade. If you look through the trees, through the firs and the cedars, you can see that there's light coming through, and you can see the sun, which is coming down actually the railway tracks, And you can see that on this hybrid, it's a Fortunii hybrid, you can see that there are actually a lot of flower trusses. Next spring, this should be covered in pink. Originally, I didn't have these island beds, but because this area was wet and I had too many plants, I decided to keep digging up grass and putting in more plants. And I've actually taken out a few plants here, and I do need to limb up some of the ones that are already here because it's way too dense. So I need to limb up or prune off some of the lower branches so that there's more light that will come through and into the various plants. Here's another example of why species plants are so interesting. This is stridulosum, and not only are the mature leaves interesting, but the new growth look like candles, and they have the bud scales are red, and it's just exquisite when the new growth comes. So even though the flowers are early red, are beautiful, it doesn't really matter that it's not blooming. And these are ostrich ferns, and which are a little bit too prolific actually, but when they first have new growth, they are mirrored. The stridulosum and the new growth from the ostrich fern are very similar, so that makes it interesting. When I added this pathway, I extended this bed because this is a species by the name of Thompsoni, and Thompsoni is a beautiful early red that has exquisite flowers, but also a nice tree-like habit. Now we're walking into the main lawn, and we're looking south. This big bed, I designed it so that the larger plants would be at the back and growing up, and then the shorter plants like Cayusianum and the smaller Cox hybrids would be, and some of the hybrids from some of the dwarf plants would be at the front of the bed. Because it's wet, primulas also love this piece of property. So really this is an early spring garden, not so much a fall garden, except for the trees. And I love Japanese maples, and this is an Acer griseum, which is actually not Japanese, it's Chinese, but it's the one with the exfoliating bark. And there's chamaecypresses, beeches, magnolias. So even some of this is Magnolia smirnoii. And you can see the fruit of it, which is kind of interesting. This is a styrax, Styrax japonica. This is pink chimes. It's a little bit pinker than the more common white one. Eddie's White Wonder cornus. I forgot. And this is a Cercidophyllum, the Katsura tree. It's one with a single trunk, which I think is a little easier in a property. This is a half an acre, but it is a huge tree when it's an adult, and so a single trunk tree is a little more manageable on a smaller property. When I took the soil out of the pathway, I extended the bed in front of the house, and just at this point just put a few annuals in it just to fill it up until I decide what to put there. needs some water. One fun thing about having a garden is getting plants from other people. Paul Lowry had a seedling under one of his acers in a pot, and many years ago. So this is an acer aconitifolium, I believe, of some variety, some cultivar. So it's a seedling, but it's a beautiful color in the winter and in the fall. So that's what's a fun thing about being a gardener. When this property was built, when this property was, the house was being built, I came home from work, or came to the property to see the progress on the house one day, and they had just dumped a load of fill for the property. And there were these two huge rocks in that load of fill, and they were going to bury them, you know, because there was a lot of room that needed to be filled in. And I said, stop, no, I want those rocks. I want those rocks. Leave them out. I want to place them in the garden. So to break up all the green, because there's so much green, yes, that one too, I thought it would be a good idea to have a dry creek bed. This is, of course, not a true creek here, but I do have a water feature that we're just in the process of renovating, but so it needed to give it a little bit of relief from all the green. So that's the idea here, and of course this is one of the warmest areas of the garden. This is where the property drains. You can't see it because of this deciduous trees and leaf, but on the other side of the railway tracks is Green Lake. And this property is sloping and drains, so this is where my property drains out, and it's always wet there, so the gunnera is very happy. I bought these limestone rocks on Kijiji. I was going to make a patio and then use them for stepping stones in the garden. But I've left them here because I can't quite figure out what to do with them, and because I also know that the children that visit the garden love to walk along them and play on them, and the snakes also really like them. So, which helps with, you know, reducing the snails and the slugs and things like that. So I want to make my garden a healthy garden. I am part of the Master Gardener organization, and they really push the idea of not using pesticides and herbicides, and so we need to make nature work with nature. So that's kind of why I've left these here. This is the tallest, or I think one of the tallest rudbeckias, and I can't believe how tall it is, but I now have two of them and have a variety of perennials in here. It's okay, but it gets so much sun here, it's a little bit too hot for most rhododendrons. I have more azaleas in this area. This is a very nice tree that I really think is worth purchasing. If someone asks me, what kind of trees do you recommend for a garden, a small garden even, is a Stewardia. This is a Stewardia, pseudocamellia, and it has lovely, quite big white flowers in the spring, and as it matures, it also has some seed heads that you can see a few of them there, but there aren't too many. But it has an incredible color in the fall. So it gives you lots of payback for a tree. It's not just a one season wonder. And it doesn't get too huge. This is this is called Acer Red Pygmy. It's not red, so I'm not sure if it was mislabeled. but it's still a beautiful tree, and this property is certainly conducive to Japanese maples. There's probably, a dozen or more on this property. I can't remember exactly how many, but many. And there's some happy circumstances as well. This Verbena bonariensis planted itself by this little bridge, and you can see that the pollinators are enjoying it. So it's another plant that is worth having and keeping for sure. And you can see that this is another wet spot in my garden because the primulas are huge, and of course they're seeding themselves everywhere. Conifers are incredible. They give such structure to a garden. This is a Korean fir, silberlock. It was a gift from Terry Richmond when I moved here, and it is a very, very happy plant. Interesting cones, not too huge, but gives the garden some structure. This is Ino no Ito. It's another Japanese maple. Has very, very fine leaves so that the light can stream through it. Very beautiful structure of the plant even in the winter time. This section of my garden is where I initially put my vegetable garden, but since the fir tree roots love and go where all the water is, this became too difficult to grow things like lettuce and different things like that. So it's now become more my berry patch. So fall bearing raspberries, and the strawberries this year were excellent. I have to move the blueberries because it's too dry, so they don't do so well. One thing I was trying to do is to try and have something in bloom most of the year. So this hamamelis, I have maybe 4 or 5, 6 different cultivars of witch hazel. So this gives you some color in the very, very dead of winter. So this one is a variety that has, it's called, this one is Diane, which is sort of a reddish brown, orangey red brown color. Many of them are yellow, but this one is a different color. And this is a unique tree. It's a larch, larix, and it's a deciduous conifer. It turns bright yellow in the fall, and then the needles drop. So it's kind of unique, but then it makes it so that it's not dark in the winter. And 4 or 5 more different Japanese maples. I don't know what I was thinking. There's too many of them in here, but I can't figure out which one to take down. They're too big to move, so I'd have to take one out. Beautiful, beautiful seeds, and very prolific. There's always seedlings underneath them. This one's Trompenberg. It has beautiful red leaves and then turns dark green as the summer progresses. This is an area that I have planted some of my dwarf species rhododendrons, several Campylogynums, Lepidostylum, and bulbs interplanted. That's Crinum, the pink lily at the back. And This is a kind of a cool hybrid azalea by the name of Great Expectations. It's a very, very late growing azalea that is phototropic. That means it's heads to the ground, and it's spread itself all over. I wish I'd put it on a higher bank because it's a beautiful, beautiful orange. Radicans, and this is these little guys. Their flowers are so huge. They're so much bigger than their leaves. The dwarf species rhododendrons are just exquisite. I think they're the best value for any garden. They truly are. And it doesn't matter if, for example, this one, it has never bloomed, but it doesn't matter. In my opinion, it doesn't matter that it's never bloomed. It's just such a beautiful plant with gorgeous indimentum. It was mislabeled, but it is part of the Globigerum group of, and all of these plants here are all in the rhododendron family. Quinquefolium, which has 5 leaves, that's why quin. It's a little bit, maybe too hot for it there. So thank you for coming to my garden, and I could go on for probably hours, but thank you for paying attention and enjoying my garden with me.